The first time I noticed it, she was just sitting there, half turned toward the TV, her hand resting on the remote, not really watching anything. The afternoon light fell through the blinds in long, uneven bars, cutting across her face and the couch cushions like quiet fault lines. I was supposed to be waiting for her son, my friend, who'd gone upstairs to grab his phone charger. 5 minutes, he'd said, but it had already been 15. She didn't say much. She just gave me that polite, practiced smile every mom gives when her son's friend comes over. The kind that says, make yourself at home, but not too much. Still, there was something different today. Maybe it was the way she sighed when she set down her coffee, or the way she brushed her thumb along the rim of the mug, lost in thought. Long day, I asked, mostly to fill the air. She glanced at me, quick, then gone. They're all long lately, she said softly. Her voice wasn't tired so much as restrained, like she was saving the rest of the sentence for someone who'd never ask. The TV played quietly, a game show she wasn't following. And in that mix of silence and sound, I realized how close we were sitting. Not close enough for it to be strange, but close enough that I could smell the faint scent of her shampoo. Something clean, citrusy, familiar in a way I couldn't explain. Then the mug slipped from her fingers. Not far, just enough for coffee to spill over the edge and drip onto the couch. Ah, damn, she muttered, springing up. I grabbed a napkin from the table and crouched beside her. We both reached for the same spot. Her hand brushed mine. Just a second of contact, skin warm and soft, but it froze me. She pulled back quickly, tucking her hair behind her ear as if that tiny touch had been louder than any word. Sorry, she said. I should have been more careful. I shook my head. No, it's fine. But I didn't finish, because she looked at me then. Really looked. It wasn't a long stare. Just long enough to make the room feel smaller. The blinds kept shifting with the wind, throwing shadows across her face. And for a heartbeat, I couldn't tell if the air had changed or I had. Her lips parted slightly, maybe to say something else, but her son's footsteps echoed on the stairs. She straightened immediately, grabbing the mug, her whole expression folding back into that safe, distant politeness. Thank you, she said, as if I'd done more than hand her a napkin. He came down a second later, phone in hand, talking about something I didn't hear. She laughed at whatever he said, too brightly, too quickly. When we left, she stood at the door, hand on the frame, the sunlight outlining her shoulders. Take care, boys, she said, her tone light again. But her eyes caught mine for just a fraction too long. That look stayed with me the whole drive home. And even now, I can't tell if it was a warning or an invitation she wished I hadn't noticed. I told myself I wouldn't go back that week. But on Thursday evening, I found myself standing outside their gate again, holding a book I'd borrowed months ago, pretending that was the reason. My friend had texted earlier saying he'd be out running errands till late. Still, I rang the bell. She opened the door halfway, the chain still hooked. Oh, you, she said, a small, surprised laugh escaping before she unlatched it. He's not home. I know, I said, lifting the book. Just thought I'd return this before I forget. She hesitated for a beat, then smiled, faint, cautious. You could have just given it to him later. Yeah, I said. I guess I just wanted to drop it off. She stepped aside, motioning me in. All right, but I was just about to make tea. You want some? The way she said it, not warmly, but not indifferently either, made me nod. The house felt quieter than before. No TV, no distant noise. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint scrape of her spoon against a mug. She moved easily, like she knew the rhythm of every small sound in that place. You're in college, right? She asked, without turning. Yeah, second year. She nodded, pouring water into 2 cups. Feels like a different world at that age. What about you? I asked before thinking. Has it changed much? That made her pause. She looked up, as if considering how honest to be. It's quieter, she said finally. And people expect you to have things figured out by now. You learn to pretend you do. She handed me my cup. Our fingers almost met, but she pulled hers back just before they could. We sat at the small dining table. She rested her elbows lightly on the surface, watching the steam rise from her cup as though it said something she didn't want to. Does your mom ever tell you not to hang around older people too much? She asked suddenly, her tone half joking. Not really. I smiled. Why should she have? Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp but playful. Some people get the wrong idea. I didn't know what to say to that. I wanted to ask what idea, but the words caught in my throat. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. Like something small and dangerous had just shifted in the air. She broke eye contact first, standing to rinse her cup. Anyway, she said, her voice softer now. You're a good kid. Don't overthink things. That word, kid, landed harder than I expected. I wasn't sure if she meant it, or if it was a line she used to push me back to where I belonged. I stood too, my chair scraping faintly. I should probably get going. When I turned, she was standing close behind me. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence before I saw her face. Wait, she said. You've got something. She reached out, brushing her thumb just below my jawline, where a strand of lint clung to my collar. The touch lasted half a second, but my pulse reacted like it had been minutes. Her hand dropped, and so did her gaze. There, she murmured. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the front door creaked slightly from the breeze, and she stepped back as if nothing had happened. Good night, she said, her voice calm but eyes unreadable. I nodded, stepping outside. But as the door clicked shut, I realized I hadn't taken the book back. Maybe I hadn't really come to return it at all. I saw her again a week later, not at her house this time, but at the cafe near campus. She was standing in line ahead of me, reading something on her phone, her coat draped loosely over one arm. The light from the window fell across her hair, and I had the strange, involuntary thought that maybe she belonged more to this quiet, in-between kind of place. Not home, not work, just somewhere she didn't have to play anyone's role. I almost didn't say anything. But when she turned slightly, and our eyes met, recognition flickered, and the corners of her mouth lifted just enough. Well, she said, if it isn't my good Samaritan. You stalking me now? Pure coincidence, I said. Unless the universe wanted me to buy you coffee. She let out a soft laugh. Not loud, but enough to turn a few heads. The universe has strange timing, she murmured. We ended up sitting by the window, our cups between us, steam curling in thin ribbons. She told me she'd been catching up on work emails, but her tone was distracted. My pulse had been steady all morning, but now it felt uneven, like I was waiting for a sign I wasn't supposed to read. Are you always this quiet? She asked after a pause. Only when I don't know what I'm allowed to say, I replied. That made her tilt her head, studying me. You think there are rules to talking to me? Maybe, I said. You did warn me once not to cross any lines. Her smile faded slightly, not into a frown, but something thoughtful. And you remember that. I remember everything you say, I admitted, then instantly regretted how honest it sounded. She looked down, stirring her coffee though there was nothing left to dissolve. You shouldn't, she said softly. People forget. That's how they stay sane. I wanted to ask what she meant, who she was trying to forget, but her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, expression tightening. A name flashed briefly before she turned it face down. Sorry, she said, forcing a small smile. Work thing. It's fine. But my voice came out rougher than I meant. We sat in silence, watching the reflection of people passing by in the glass. I could see her watching them too, like she was somewhere else entirely. Then she laughed suddenly at something I said, something small and clumsy, and for a second, everything loosened. It wasn't the laugh itself, it was what came after. The way she leaned forward slightly, her hand resting near mine, fingers brushing the back of my knuckle as she steadied her cup. It was accidental, but it didn't feel like it. I didn't pull away. Neither did she. Then the barista called her name. She blinked, her hand retreating as though she'd been caught doing something she wasn't sure she'd actually done. That's me, she said, standing too quickly, bumping the table and nearly spilling what was left of her drink. Here, I've got it. I started, reaching out, but she shook her head. No, it's fine. Her voice was low now, almost trembling. You should get back to whatever you were doing. Before I could answer, she turned toward the counter. The moment had folded itself away, too fragile to chase. When she left, she didn't look back, but her untouched second cup sat on the table between us, still warm. I watched it cool until the surface went still, and in that silence, I realized I wasn't sure which line I'd already crossed. I hadn't planned to see her again that soon, but she texted, just a short message. If you're near the cafe, I could use company. Only if you're free. No emojis. No explanation. Just that. By the time I got there, she was already seated by the window, stirring a drink she hadn't touched. The light outside had started to fade. That hour when everything looks softer, even the things that shouldn't. "Hey," I said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up, her expression unreadable. "You came?" "You asked." That earned the faintest smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure you wanted me to." For a while, the only sound was the gentle clink of her spoon against the mug. She was wearing the same simple bracelet I'd noticed before, silver, slightly worn. Her fingers kept brushing over it like it helped her stay composed. "I shouldn't have texted," she said after a pause. "It's been a strange week. You can talk to me." She exhaled softly, then met my gaze. "That's the problem." The words landed between us like something fragile. I tried to find something to say, but nothing came out right. My throat felt tight. "You mean because of?" She shook her head. "Because you listened too closely." That made me smile without meaning to. "You say that like it's a flaw." "It is," she said quietly. "In people like us." Her hand rested near her cup again, and for a second, her thumb brushed the rim. Same nervous gesture as always. I watched it, wondering if she realized she did that whenever she was trying to hold something back. "Sometimes I think," she started, then stopped. "No, never mind. Say it." Her eyes lifted, steady and searching. "Sometimes I think you look at me like you're trying to remember something that hasn't even happened yet." My chest tightened. "Maybe I am." She blinked, as if she hadn't expected that. The silence that followed was dense, the kind that hums between two people who both know they've crossed some invisible point but pretend they haven't. Then she laughed softly, one of those small, helpless laughs that breaks tension instead of adding to it. "You really shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I might forget to stop you next time." The line hung in the air. Unfinished, electric. Neither of us moved. Then the barista called her name again, same as last time. The sound broke through like cold air. She turned, standing abruptly, her chair scraping faintly against the floor. When she came back with the new cup, I noticed her hands were trembling just slightly. She tried to hide it by adjusting her sleeve. "You're shaking," I said. "Caffeine," she murmured, not meeting my eyes. "Right." I wanted to reach across, steady her hand, but I didn't. My fingers just hovered an inch away before pulling back. She saw it, though? Of course she did. When she finally looked at me again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "We shouldn't keep meeting like this." "I know," I said, but neither of us stood up. The light outside faded completely, leaving only the reflection of the two of us in the glass, sitting too close, saying too little, and knowing exactly what that meant. For almost a week, I didn't hear from her. No texts, no chance encounters, just silence, the kind that stretches long enough to make you start doubting what actually happened. I told myself it was better that way. We'd crossed some invisible threshold, and maybe she'd come to her senses before I did. But every time I passed the cafe window, I caught myself looking for her reflection. Then, one evening, I saw her again, not at the cafe, not at her house, but outside a bookstore downtown. She was talking to a man, older than me, about her age. He was laughing at something she said, too close, too familiar. She smiled, the kind of soft, knowing smile I hadn't seen in weeks, and something inside me tightened before I could reason with it. She noticed me just as he placed a hand on her arm. Her smile faltered, eyes flicking my way. For a second, I saw confusion, then something that looked a lot like guilt. I turned away before she could say anything. The next day, she showed up at the cafe first. I almost didn't sit down when she gestured, but I did. "You saw me last night," she said quietly. I nodded, staring at the table. "That's my ex-husband," she continued. "He wanted to talk about selling the house." I should have believed her. I wanted to, but part of me hated that I even cared enough to question it. "I wasn't." I started, but she cut me off. "Yes, you were. You looked like someone who wanted to ask a question he didn't have the right to ask." That stung, mostly because she was right. "I don't know what you expect me to do," I said. "Pretend I don't care?" "Because I've tried." Her expression softened, but she didn't reach for me. "You shouldn't have to care. That's the point." I laughed once, quietly, but it sounded bitter. "That's not how it works." She sighed, pressing her fingers against her temple like she was holding back words. "You're 20. You've got time to make mistakes that won't ruin anyone's life. I don't have that luxury." There it was, the line again. The invisible one she kept rebuilding every time we came close to crossing it. "I'm not asking for anything," I said. I just can't act like you don't matter. Her eyes flickered at that, the smallest tremor in her composure. Then her phone buzzed again, the same contact name as before flashing across the screen. She silenced it, turning the phone face down. You should go, she said softly. Before I forget what's right. I didn't move. She looked up, and for the first time, she didn't try to hide anything. There was hurt in her eyes, yes, but also something warmer, something she'd been trying to bury since the beginning. You think this is easy for me? She whispered. It isn't. Every time I see you, She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear the rain start against the window, faint at first, then steady. I reached across the table, my hand hovering near hers, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off her skin. Her fingers twitched, as if they might move toward mine. Then some. Were behind us. The cafe door opened, and a gust of cold air swept through, breaking the spell. She pulled her hand back, folding it neatly into her lap. When I looked at her again, she wasn't looking at me. We can't keep doing this, she said, almost to herself. But even as she said it, her eyes lingered on the empty space between us, the one neither of us seemed capable of leaving alone. It had been raining since morning. One of those steady, unhurried rains that make the world look half asleep. I hadn't planned to see her again. We'd both said enough, and too much. But by late afternoon, I was standing outside her house anyway, holding an umbrella I didn't need, the kind of excuse you invent when you've run out of reasons, but not out of feelings. The porch light was off. Through the window, I saw her in the living room, barefoot, sitting cross-legged on the couch with a notebook in her lap. She looked like she was writing something, but not really seeing the page. When she noticed me through the glass, she hesitated. Then she opened the door. You're drenched, she said, though she didn't sound surprised. I was nearby, I lied. She raised an eyebrow, the ghost of a smile tugging at her mouth. You always say that when you're not. I set the umbrella aside. Can I come in? She nodded slowly. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, faint, familiar. The TV was on mute. I shouldn't have come, I said. I know, she replied. But you did. We stood there, neither sitting, neither leaving. The quiet between us wasn't awkward this time. It felt like something waiting for permission to exist. Finally, she sighed. You keep showing up, and I keep letting you. Do you ever ask yourself why? All the time. And I don't have an answer that makes sense. Her laugh was soft, tired, honest. I'll give you that. I watched her fingers play with the pen she still held. It clicked once, twice, before she set it down. I wasn't writing anything important, she said. Just a list of things I'm supposed to be done with. Like what? Like this, she said, gesturing between us. Whatever this is supposed to be. I swallowed hard. Does making a list help? Sometimes, she said. Until you show up again. I didn't mean to move closer, but the space between us kept collapsing. Maybe it was the rain tapping on the windows, or the way her voice had softened, a tone halfway between surrender and restraint. You once said people forget. I reminded her. That's how they stay sane. She met my eyes. And you never learned how. I shook my head. No, you made sure of that. For a long moment, we just stood there. Then she reached out, almost absent-mindedly, and straightened the collar of my jacket, her fingers brushing my neck. The smallest gesture, but my chest tightened anyway. You'll make someone very happy someday, she whispered. I don't want someone, I said. I wanted. Her eyes widened, and she pressed a finger gently to my lips. Not to silence me. Exactly. More like she was afraid of what would happen if I finished the sentence. Don't, she said. Her hand trembled against my skin. Please. The word please broke something. I stepped back, giving her space, but she followed with her gaze, eyes shining. Not tears, exactly, but the kind of brightness that comes from holding too much in for too long. I can't promise I'll forget you, I said quietly. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? She hesitated. That you remember me kindly. That's enough. The rain outside softened, turning into a whisper. She looked toward the window, then back at me, a single glance that held every word we hadn't said. I turned to leave. She didn't stop me, but as I reached the door, her voice came again, low, breaking slightly. Hey, she said. I looked back. She smiled, small, fragile, real. Thank you for not crossing the line, even when I almost did. And somehow, that hurt more than any goodbye could have. It's strange to think. That stay with you. Not the big moments, not the rain that day, not the look in her eyes when she said please. It's smaller things that replay. The way she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, how she always paused before saying my name, like she was still deciding whether to. Weeks passed, then months. The ache that once sat sharp behind my ribs became something quieter, not gone, just folded neatly away. I went back to my routines, the same cafe, the same walk home, the same silence waiting at night. But the silence had changed. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full, like it remembered too. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing toward the door, half expecting her to walk in. She never did, of course. But her absence was a kind of presence too. Patient, honest, unexaggerated. I learned, slowly, that not every connection is meant to become a story. Some exist just to remind you what real feels like, even if it can't stay. One evening, the barista, a new one, asked if I wanted the usual. I almost smiled. Because there it was again, the echo of a life that once intersected mine for a handful of mornings and a few too long looks. I said yes, took my coffee, and sat by the window. The rain was starting again. For the first time, I didn't flinch at the sound of it. I thought about what she'd said, remember me kindly. And I did. Not as something unfinished or forbidden, but as a part of me that had taught me how to look at someone and really see them. There's peace in that. The kind that doesn't ask for closure, just quiet acceptance. I don't know where she is now. If she still writes in her notebook, if she still orders the same drink, if she ever thinks of that moment when neither of us could speak. But I hope she found what she needed. And maybe, in some corner of her mind, she hopes the same for me. It's funny, love isn't always a beginning or an ending. Sometimes it's just a lesson whispered between two people who almost said too much. And when I walk home now, I pass that same streetlight near her house. The one that used to flicker. It doesn't anymore. Maybe some things just find their rhythm after we stop trying to fix them. I look up once, smile to myself, and keep walking. Clapperboard for you, the viewers. Did this story stay with you? Would you have wanted them to meet again? Or was this ending the right kind of honest? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? The ones that almost happened, or the ones that still might?